whole thing is starting to get so much on my nerves. Audio. 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 Freaking O. All right. Yay. Ooh, really good. Time to make a big change in all of this stuff. Audio. Right. All right. All right. I don't have any idea what's going on here. Zero. I have no idea what's going on here. Because when I got up to close the door, so I wouldn't interrupt my wife, I knocked over the microphone and all these little bitty wires that are down here, little cables that go to the mic and headphones. I've got a 45-foot cable for my headphones, which is lovely and horrifying all at the same time. But welcome to the Morning Report. It is a pleasure to be here. This Morning Report is going to be first, hopefully, if I get this right. And I got to be honest with you, I'm still working on my workflow. Hopefully, hang on a second here. I don't know what that is, but it was annoying. Anyway, see, I'm fine with this because this is just me being a guy. I'm just a guy. I'm not any different than anybody else. Any of you could do this, and most of you should, and most of you should. That we are just doing the best we can. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy looking at all of these things that are happening in our country, that are happening in our society, and hey, and I'm just asking questions. Will is just asking questions. That's what we're doing. All right, so we're going to get started on the Morning Report. I'm going to click record over here. Oops. All righty. Again, so now welcome to the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. We are so glad you're here. My name is Willie Lawson. Did you see the news on yesterday, on Sunday? Today is May 27th, 2025, in the year of our Lord, for archival purposes. And on the 1st of June, the United States was going to impose a 50% tariff on goods from the EU. Well, what's been happening? Well, what's been happening is that the EU said, hey, wait. Can we talk about this? They're like, see what happened was, and apparently these, because with all my friends, and I have some really good friends who are really super smart about all this stuff, and more importantly than being super smart, they are always they have the highest degree of integrity. And so when they start with something and they say, hey, listen, this is how we ought to do it, they mean that. So they are super smart about, hey, listen, tariffs aren't free trade. Tariffs are a tax on people, on consumers. And they can back that up historically. But my question to them and to you this morning is that, are these tariffs, or the threat of tariffs that Trump is using, are we using them in a way that we've not used them before, or are we in a different environment in world politics and world economics than we've ever been? For many years, we were the top dog in manufacturing, and so tariffs on other nations' goods really did protect industries that were vibrant. Well, I can't say that the steel industry, I don't think anybody can say that the steel industry in America is vibrant. Can you? Plus a myriad of other things. Or the toaster industry. We're not making toasters. You know what else we're not making? All the stuff that I knocked over. Mice, these. There. I dare you to find an American-made mouse. Go ahead. If you find one, put it in the comments. And if it's less than $100, I'll buy it. I swear to you, if you can find an American-made mouse like this, with the cool lights, ergonomic, wireless, Bluetooth, really, made in America, it says made in America on it, I will buy it. If it's less than $100, I'm not paying $100 for any mouse. I'm not. I'll go back to, I'll find a way to go back to the mouse that I had on my PS2. You know, from my IBM, Model 2. So I'll buy it. So it used to be that we were protecting these markets that we don't have anymore. So yesterday, actually on the 25th, day before yesterday, President Donald Trump announced that he would postpone the implementation of a 50% tariff on a range of European goods. The original activation date, June 1st. The new deadline is now July 9th. Now, everyone's going to say, why? Why does a 6-week delay matter? Because behind that delay is a global economic tug of war involving nearly $1 trillion of trade. See, this is what a lot of people don't get. And this is something that hasn't been done, which is bizarre to me. That these kind of deals, this kind of tugging back and forth, don't happen all the time. Or maybe they do. And this is maybe the first time that there's been enough transparency, enough, that Trump and Trump's administration is deciding to let the rest of us in on the game. Could that be it? Because behind what the delay is, of course, is an economic war involving nearly $1 trillion in trade, strategic alliances, and a future post-pandemic manufacturing in the West. This indeed, let there be no doubt, the pandemic was, especially for the international, the global financial fund, whoever there, the monetary fund, International Monetary Fund, that's an IMF. This was supposed to be the Great Reset. The IMF had decided this was going to be the Great Reset, and that was not going to work out post-pandemic for manufacturing in the West and manufacturing here in this country and the economy of this country. It was not going to work out well. It wasn't. Once the globalists saw how easy it was to throw us off our tile. So let's go back. Why do these tariffs exist in the first place? Well, Trump's trade policy from 2017 to 2020, and now again in his second term, has centered around one word, and that word is leverage. The tariffs in question target EU manufactured automobiles, Mercedes Benz, BMWs, agricultural products, steel, like we talked about before, aluminium. I've been waiting all day to say that word, aluminum, and luxury goods. These are not random categories. These are sectors where the EU has long enjoyed favorable access to American markets. And if you don't believe me, just go outside and go for a ride and see how many Mercedes and see how many Volvos, see how many BMWs you find on American roads. And not far from here, which is crazy to me, is a Maserati dealership. Maserati is a Italian car, right? Maserati? Yeah. So they've enjoyed this favorable access to American markets, often at the expense of U.S. producers. And for decades, Washington was asleep at the wheel, or worse, willingly ceding ground in exchange for diplomatic pats on the head. Thank you, America, for letting us slip our cars into your markets and having your automobile industry, which was the greatest in the world, become insignificant. So Trump's response was, America first. America first. But unlike the media's caricature of some isolationist tantrum, this is economic nationalism with teeth. So, why the delay? The White House cited productive discussions with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as a reason for a pause. According to senior administration officials, both sides agreed in principle to pursue mutual tariff reduction talks. So if both sides say, hey, listen, okay, we got to do something. We want to do something. They don't want 50% tariffs. They don't want to be shut off from U.S. markets. They don't. It's too profitable to them. So let's make a deal. The EU is trying their best, or they should be trying their best, to make the best deal for them. I would be disappointed. And if I were a European citizen, I would be disappointed if, what's her face, Ursula von der Leyen, or Ursula von der Leyen, there you go, doesn't play hardball for the citizens of Europe or the citizens that are in the EU. Because that's how the game is played. And you know what, folks? That's how Trump knows the game is played. He understands that that's how you play the game. So you're gonna push as hard as you can to get the best deal for your side. And I just don't think that a lot of Americans, especially on the left, and even those some on the right, who say they're on the right anyway, have the stomach for it. When all this has to be hashed out, when you got to make the sausage. This is what this is. This is you. They're in there making the sausage. They're seasoning the meat. They're putting it in the grinder. They're putting in the casing, which is not nearly as appetizing when you look at it as it is when it's lying on your plate. Delicious, all ready to be eaten. So we're making sausage here, and it's not pretty. Not at all. So again, according to senior administration officials, both sides agreed in principle to pursue mutual tariff reduction talks, focusing particularly on the auto sector and industrial goods. Let me translate that for you. Trump rattled the saber, and the EU blinked. But instead of pulling the trigger, Trump is giving them just enough rope to either negotiate in good faith or hang themselves in good faith. If they negotiate in good faith, then the 50% tariff won't happen. And the luxury vehicles the prices of luxury vehicles won't go even higher through the roof. Did you remember when BMWs were very, very expensive. They were much more expensive than Fords, an Escort, Ford Escort. Anyway, remember that? Remember? And Mercedes were much more expensive, and now they're all about the same price. How's that possible? Because what happens is because the EU doesn't have to pay these great tariffs, now the prices have equalized. Yes, and the American citizens do have more access to foreign cars. Not necessarily Maseratis, but definitely the ones that come to mind are, of course, Volvos and Mercedes-Benz and BMWs and the like. So if they're going to negotiate in good faith, it makes a lot of sense to give them 6 weeks or so to get their act together. And if they negotiate in bad faith, and then you hit them with a 50% tariff. Either way, America wins. So what's really at stake here? Here's the real meat and potatoes. The EU runs a $183 billion trade surplus with the U.S. Billion. 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 Wow. It's insane. American-made goods face higher average tariffs entering the EU than EU goods face entering the U.S. The European auto sector, particularly Germany, Mercedes, and Volkswagen, relies heavily on U.S. sales. A 50% tariff would hit Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz like a hammer on glass. But this goes deeper. This is about who controls the supply chains of the future. This is about whether American manufacturers or just consumes, whether we lead or follow. The globalists want one answer. Trump wants another. I talked about earlier about the Great Reset. The Great Reset is to make America to be followers, not leaders. The Great Reset from the International Monetary Fund and others, World Health Organization, all these other global, organizations, they're really tired of America being out front. The nation that is less than 300 years old, that has come to the world's aid, I don't know, once or twice. At least twice, right? Save the world at least twice. These globalists are tired of the United States leading the pack. Too bad for them. And the American worker, well, we've been waiting for decades for someone to take our side. Now, of course, the media is in a meltdown. And the elites are in a panic. Why? Because Trump is messing with their bag. That's street talk for messing with their money. Because it all goes back to money, right? So as expected, CNN, MSNBC, and even the Financial Times are already clutching their pearls. They say Trump is destabilizing markets and provoking allies. They say this is economic warfare. No, what it is economic accountability. For years, Europe has subsidized its industries, taxed American tech companies into oblivion, and hidden behind the false veil of multilateralism. And now they're being asked to play fair. Surprise, surprise. Remember that from Gomer Pyle? Surprise, surprise. They're not thrilled. The Biden era fantasy of global cooperation is over. What we're witnessing now is a cold, hard reset. We were being lulled to sleep because we were being good partners. We were cooperating. What we were doing is we were cooperating in our own destruction. it's we were cooperating in our own destruction. We were walking ourselves to the slaughterhouse, and we weren't resisting, and we're smiling about it. Every factory that got closed, every business that moved to another nation to manufacture goods, to make stuff. Every time another country was in charge of something that we desperately need, whether it be energy, whether it be something as simple as masks. You remember during COVID that all the masks that were mandatory in all the places that we went were all made in China. Ironic, huh? That we couldn't produce them for ourselves, that we had to turn the world upside down and get Ford to build ventilators. The million ventilators that they said they needed in New York, which they never needed. And basically that they were putting people on ventilators, and it was actually worse than had they not. Remember? That we didn't have enough manufacturing capacity on our own to provide for the safety and security of our own citizens. That's a problem, kids. That's not global cooperation. That's slow, painful suicide for this nation. Where you live, where your kids live, where your parents live, where your grandparents live. So this is a cold, hard reset. Yes, and so if you call that destabilization, okay, fine, shaking it up. And so now there is some instability, and people aren't sure. Okay, a little discomfort now, a little pain now, for ultimate comfort later. I think that we should be good with that. A grown-up should be good with that. Now, Europe isn't just rattled. It's cornered. Sure, they floated retaliatory tariffs, but here's the reality. They can't go tit for tat without hurting themselves even more. The U.S. consumer is still Europe's most lucrative customer base. We saw that in China, and we're seeing that with the EU. Politically, EU leaders are walking tightropes, with right-wing parties gaining ground in nearly every European country, especially those angry about losing jobs to green policies and global trade deals. So by July 9th, the EU can either cut a deal or face a tariff tsunami. Inside Trump's economic team, the move is being celebrated as a power play. Yes, and sometimes power plays have to happen. This is serious. This is the big league. This is the real thing. According to insiders close to Trade Representative Bob, I'm going to get his name right. Leitzer. There you go. The delay gives the U.S. negotiators leverage without giving up pressure. Pressure's still on the EU. They still have the leverage. They still have the same leverage. We can just wait. Wait 6 weeks. That's fine. Nothing changes. Nothing changes until the EU comes to the table and says, hey, listen, Ursula comes to the table and goes, hey, what about this? The U.S. could say, yeah, that's a good deal. We'll take that. Let's go. Or, nope, it's not good enough. Do better. Right? So what's likely being discussed behind closed doors? 0 for 0 tariffs on industrial goods. New auto manufacturing quotas favoring U.S.-based factories. Digital service taxes rollbacks. The EU's latest attempt to squeeze big tech and U.S. startups. And if the EU doesn't play ball, the hammer drops. July 9th. So what's the impact on American industries? For America, this is a defining moment. If this strategy works and the tariffs lead to new deals, it could reshort tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs. Now, when I say manufacturing jobs, the left always rolls their eyes. And I'm not talking about, and I'll say this one more time, I'm not talking about making toasters. I'm not saying that we have to dominate the world in making toasters. But we should be dominating the world in making automobiles. We should be dominating the world in steel and aluminium. I got to say it again. We should be dominating the world in things like chips and things like PC boards and those kinds of components, especially that go into machines that do AI, that do crypto. There isn't any reason we can't do that because these are highly skilled, high-paying jobs for American citizens. There's no reason why we shouldn't be. It gives farmers better market access to, but it forces Europe to cut red tape on American imports and to prove that strategic tariffs, when used smartly, don't cause recessions. They create leverage. Because Trump isn't anti-trade, he's anti-surrender. And there's a big difference. All right. What you're not hearing anywhere else. Here's what the mainstream media press will not tell you. Germany's economy, teetering. Their green energy transition is in crisis. Their auto sector is shrinking. France is dealing with mass protests over cost of living and immigration. Yes, Italy and Spain are on the verge of right-wing revolt that could reset their EU alignment. They can't afford to fight with Trump. He knows it. They got so much going on. This is sort of reminiscent of what was happening in the Soviet Union for Reagan. The Soviet Union was struggling. All Reagan did was push them over. They were already teetering. All he did by, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I'm sorry, I sounded like Clinton saying that. Right? And the same thing is happening in Europe right now. They can't afford a fight with Trump. He knows that. Why this delay is genius? It turns July 9th into Europe's Day of Reckoning. It actually turns up the heat. It actually draws attention to all of this that people didn't even know, that you may not have known. It draws attention. It sort of turns up the heat. So where do we go from here? Mark the date, folks, July 9th, 2025. Circle on your calendar. That's the day that Trump's either going to lock in a better deal or drops the hammer. But let me ask you this. Should we keep letting Europe run up a trade surplus while regulating us to death? Should we keep pretending multilateralism works when the scoreboard says other side? Or should we finally fight for our own interests? Should we? All right. Here's the takeaway. Trump's delay isn't a backpedal. It's a setup. It's a setup for either peace with fair terms or tariff war, where we bring the biggest stick. And the American people, we're not the pawns anymore. We're the player at the table who finally found our voice. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. And just like always, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.